Page 1. The Jug and Her Bath House. Graham Williams. Chapter 1. The New Day. This morning, as I lay in my warm bed, I was woken by the bells of St. Paul's Cathedral. I listened as they ended their pealing, finally falling silent. I listened then to the silence of the house below me, hearing the odd creak, and now and again, the sounds from the kitchen, as Molly the housekeeper and cook prepared the morning's meal. From outside the house, I heard the street coming to life, with the sounds of trotting horses and horse-driven coaches making their way hither and thither. The street vendors started to call out their wares of freshly made pies, buns, and bread. I heard the call of the fishmonger as he pushed his cart, trundling by on his way to market. I snuggled back into my bed, and pulled the blanket up around my neck, feeling warm and cozy. I turned my thoughts to Thomas, who I think of as my best friend in the entire world. Thomas had probably been up hours before I awoke to this new day, as his work was in the stables, and would have him up and about, mucking out the stalls of each horse in turn, and laying in fresh hay, then hanging their feed bags of oats on their necks. The thought of the smell of warm oats brought me back to the sound of Molly in the kitchen, and the thought of food. I threw back the covers and jumped out of bed as quickly as I possibly could, and stood on the cold floor. I groped for my undergarments, giving them a quick sniff, and found them a little smelly but acceptable, having only worn them for 2 days. I pulled them up into my crotch, and sat back down to add my thickest woolen hose for this late winter's day. I stood back up, pulling them up my legs, and did up the front laces, then tucked in the shirt I had slept in. Again, it was not too bad to keep on, as it was a free day and I had it to myself. Lastly, I threw on my waistcoat and looked around for my new boots. They stood in the corner of the room under a chair that also had upon it my new doublet, my prized possession, along with the boots. This day was my 16th birthday, hence the new boots and doublet. The money to pay for them was a birthday present given to me by my and Thomas's benefactor and master, John. We were both in the same situation, in that John was our benefactor, foster carer, for Thomas, his employer too. Thomas was a member of the household, one of 2 stable boys, who lived in the stable with the horses, sleeping in the part of the hayloft put aside for their mattresses and belongings. Thomas and I had a lot to thank John for. Thomas was saved from poverty in the streets after losing his family to a pestilence that ravaged London, leaving many dead. I had to thank John for my position, and also an education. I learned to read and write, as I was educated along with his children, and kept in his household as a companion to them. Sadly, they had left to live in Holland. Then I became a helper to Master John, observing his business, as my father used to be his manager and long-time friend, before he too became ill, and died some 9 years back. John took me into his household as I had no other family, my mother having died at my birth. So, each year on this day, I marked my mother's passing, and my father's demise, by visiting and praying for their souls at St. Paul's Cathedral.